Assalamu alaikum. How are you? We are quite toward the end of this course, and we have discussed many topics on business communication, and now we are discussing a very important topic, that is writing thesis or dissertation. This comes at the end of your degree program, and you are required to write quite a voluminous topic. We have discussed certain features of a thesis writing, almost a preliminary stage of the thesis writing, to starting it with the thinking about it stage and then gradually coming towards different parts of the thesis. In the last lecture, we discussed basically these preliminary parts as well as writing synopsis, and I told you that synopsis is a very important stage of this thesis writing, because a synopsis gives you the picture. It's a mini thesis in itself, and it tells the reader, your supervisor, and even to yourself that what your thesis will look like when you write thesis. We discussed different aspects of the thesis. So after writing your thesis, you come to this stage of the structure of the main thesis. But before we did discuss some of the things from the structure of the thesis, but before we discuss, I just want to re-emphasize this aspect of choosing the topic. Remember that when you are dealing with your thesis, you must choose a topic which is single, which is specific, which is supportive, which is giving the reader this impression that it's a worth reading material. So don't write too much about your topic. It should be a single, mostly declarative sentence is enough for this, or a statement is enough. Don't write too much in your thesis. Your thesis, your title should catch the eye of your reader. It should be an eye-catching. So be very particular about it. It should be specific. It should very specifically throw light on a certain topic, on a certain issue, not in a journal way. Besides, it must be very supportive in the sense that it should be able to help you in doing the research, the further research that you are going to make. Normally it happens that in the beginning sometime we pick up one topic, but later on as the research goes, we find to modify the topic. There is no harm in it. We, as you will see, and especially when you will go through this process, you will find that you will make many modifications, many changes. But there is no problem with these modification or changes, because they should go gradually with your thinking process. So if there is something coming to your thinking process, it should be visible in all parts of the thesis writing. So avoid dead end topics, those unsuitable for your interest or your research. Avoid scattered, superficial research topic. Avoid topics that are too broader or narrower. Pick a topic that shows your individuality, your ability, and your interest. Individuality, your ability, and your interest. This is the most important thing of the topic. Continue refining and narrowing it to make it significantly specific. So when you reach at the end of your thesis, the topic of your thesis should give the gist of your whole research. So ensure that your topic conveys what you want to convey. So after you have decided on the topic and you have switched over to the next stage, that is writing main thesis. I told you that in the main thesis we normally deal with 5 parts. Number 1 is introduction. number 2 is literature review, number 3 is methodology, and number 4 is data analysis or interpretation, and number 5 is conclusion. So these are the 5 parts of your thesis. Whether it be a small thesis or a big thesis or dissertation, say for PhD, almost the parts of the thesis remain the same. So you got to be very particular. So far as the first chapter is concerned, we discussed that the first chapter basically begins with the background of the research, background of your topic. It tells the reader that why you have picked up that topic. What do you want to? What do you want to prove? What specific question you are going to discuss in your thesis? What answer you have for that thesis, for that question? So the background is very important. So whenever you are dealing with the background of your topic, be very particular. You have to keep showing, keep citing different examples from the research material that you have gathered during your research to strengthen your points. So you begin with the background of your topic in the introduction. So your first paragraph carries the background of your topic, and then you go on toward the rest of the things. Here you also explain the reason for your research, why you are going to have research on a certain topic. So after giving the background of your topic, you explain that why are you going to research on that certain issue. This is very important. Your area of interest may be law, maybe management, maybe auditing, any topic of your interest that suits your interest, that in which you can show your individuality, in which you can prove that you have something to offer to your reader. You can give a better understanding of the topic. So this is very important, that here you have to explain that why you have chosen that subject. So outline the aims of the research by presenting research question or hypothesis. We'll be discussing these things, but the most important thing to remember is that you have to grab the attention of your reader, grab the attention and interest of your reader from the very first sentence, from the very first paragraph of your thesis, of your introduction. So first is to grab the attention and interest of your reader, and secondly, introduce the problem that is to be studied. It is important. So all assertion of facts must be documented. You have to prove some question. So whatever facts you bring into your thesis, they must be properly documented. Be careful not to make any generalization in your research. You have to remember that your research is not an editorial discussion. So make a difference between the two. So far as the statement of the problem is concerned, clearly state the problem. It should not be something vague. It must be clearly. And the problem that you are going to discuss and how you are going to address it. Present relevant information about why this is an important problem. Describe what precisely you intend to show, argue, and why. Because when somebody is reading your research, the first thing that comes to their mind after you have discussed your topic, and that is, so what? So this lurking so what must be answered properly. Whenever we start reading something, we have these questions in our mind. So we have to think that, being in the shoes of our reader, that they think similarly. So we have to answer all those questions which come to the reader's mind. Is your research problem addressing a significant social problem, or is it testing some theoretical hypothesis? The issues raised ideally or timely, relevant to the problems are trends of the present time and have broad applicability. So good questions are those questions which allow theories to be tested, or as when two theories make opposing prediction, be compared. So your statement of the problem must give all these things. Then we switch over to the next thing, and that is the background and needs. You should present relevant literature review that supports the need of your project. Research articles, editorials, books, educational and government statistics can be just few things which you can use for this purpose, which are relevant to your topic. This section includes brief overview of the articles covered in the literature reviews that support your need for your project. So you are convincing the reader in the beginning of your thesis in this introduction. Then comes rationale. Rationale should define the larger problem being investigated, summarize what is known about the problem. Obviously, whenever you pick up one problem, something is known about it, but you feel that there are certain gaps. So here, by picking up that topic, that problem, you are going to define the gaps in the knowledge and you have to state what needs to be done to address the gap or gaps. So the rationale carries this aspect of your research. It tells the reader that the body of knowledge concerned to your topic has certain gaps, and you are going to give an explanation for filling those gaps. So after giving a rationale, you come to the purpose of the project. Based on the above background information, explain the purpose of your study, explain what you hope the study will accomplish and why you choose to do this particular study. This should be supported with citation and specific information related to your studies. So this purpose of your study is different from different purposes that we've been discussing. All these points needs to be very clearly understood. Whenever you are going to write thesis, I tell you that you are going to face problems. As I said in the beginning, that when you come to this stage of your degree program, in fact you are entering a very complex phase of your studies, and writing thesis is not an easy job. Unless you follow these steps, when you have these steps before you, they can be very helpful, and they are like the guiding stars. So you have started your thesis, and you begin with the introduction, and you know that how to begin with it. Give the introduction, then give the statement of the problem, then discuss the background and the need, then discuss the rationale, purpose of your project. So these things will be very helpful to you in writing your thesis. Maybe in the first place, when you start your thesis, you may be able to write just one sentence or two sentences. It seems very sketchy in the beginning, but by and by the research grows, progresses. You also start adding more sentences to these headings. So this can be very helpful in writing your thesis, and you will find it a very practical. The only thing that you need to do is, and to know is, that concentrate on these things and try to understand the differences. We are discussing different things which are quite overlapping. So you have to make a difference between the purpose, between the background, between the statement of the problem, research question or hypothesis, how they are different from each other. So here in the purpose of your project, you have to tell that what is the purpose of your project and what you hope to accomplish. This is most important thing. What you hope to accomplish, what benefit it will give to the reader. So be very particular about this, and you have to prove your purpose with citations. They will come from the your reading of the literature. So it will be very helpful. That's why I said in the last lecture that do make a study of the literature. That will be helpful in every step of your thesis writing. Then we come to the next stage of this introduction, and that is research questions or hypothesis and hypotheses. That is the main, in fact, thing that we have to be concentrated on. Given the background above, you carefully state the hypothesis or hypotheses that will be tested in your thesis. So here you have to wait and think. Hypothesis is basically the central question being research. You have a question. Why, for example, to make you understand why men and women are different. So this can be the main question. And the whole thesis answer. Obviously, you are not to pick. This is very general. You got to be specific. We've been talking about specific topic just to make you understand that what this hypothesis is. For example, from picking up your tax system of Pakistan good, it can be your hypothesis or your main question. So you have to be particular, but to make you, just to give you an idea, it should be expressed in a straightforward way and manner that what the research is going to be about. A good hypothesis is comparative, measurable and falsifiable, that it can be either prove or it can be either refute. So hypotheses are usually defined in cause-effect relationship. Cause-effect relationship mean, for example, that let's say poverty causes crimes. So this is a cause-effect relationship. Sometimes there are certain corollary hypotheses or secondary research question which are just linked with the main hypothesis. If there are any corollary hypotheses or secondary research questions, they should also be stated in this stage. Any supplemental definitions or discussions necessary to explain the hypothesis should also be offered in this part of your introduction. The things that you have to be very concerned about it, that hypothesis basically summarizes the main point of the paper in a nutshell and heralds the development of the paper. It tells the reader about the development. A thesis statement is what you will prove. It is the main argument, it is the scope, it is the main idea and the purpose of your paper, and that you intend to develop, prove, defend or explore with evidence, and therefore has an argumentative or informational edge and must be stated the obvious. So this should be your hypothesis or your research question. It is the most clearly and concisely indicated line, sentence or part in your thesis, and it is basically the subject that you discuss. So it can be taken as a guide, as a signpost. The researcher tests the initial presupposition and hypothesis as work goes on. Hypothesis is formulated in such a way that it enables the researcher to test it. Hypothesis depicts and describes the method that follows during the study. It is a kind of hunch for the researcher that the researcher has about the topic. It establishes the precise focus of the research study. It decides the aims and objective of the study. It is always in a speculative nature, and imaginative preconception of what might be true. It is a well-established research question that can be in the form of a descriptive statement or a question that I just said. So whenever you come with this situation here, you use a certain statement which uses a clause that will put your answer into the future. As I told you, at this stage your hypothesis normally comes in the future. Here you can use these type of sentences like this: I'll, or I hope to prove this, or I will prove this, I plan to do this, I intend to do this, I plan to prove that, I refute that, I argue that, I show that, I establish that, I demonstrate that. So these types of words are normally used when you are dealing with hypothesis. In the main sentence has this clause, hypothesis clause, which tell that what are you going to prove or show or demonstrate, etc. A good writer can assert the main idea in a short sentence. Revise your thesis statement as you develop your paper. As I told you, it is very natural. You write down your thesis statement in the beginning, and by you keep on improving it. There are quite few writers who finish writing about the exact topic they began with. So it happens with everyone. So don't worry if you have to make any modification anywhere in your thesis which seem different from the thinking that you made in the early stage of your thesis writing. It is okay to start with a vague or tentative thesis statement in your first draft, because the moment you go on, you progress, things start getting clearer and you start seeing things in a better manner from a different angle and a better angle. So remember, the less complicated and verbose you are in writing your statement, the more reader will follow you. As I told you, you have to choose a very specific thesis statement. For example, if you take up such a statement, men and women are different, it's a very general. You cannot work on it. The tax system of Pakistan, it's very general. As I told you previously, you have to be specific. For example, men and women are different. It's general. You can make it men and women communicate differently. Men and women communicate differently. Men tend to focus on the literal aspect of what is being said in a conversation. Women often read between the lines and focus more on intonation and body language. So this can be a research question or a hypothesis. This can be a hypothesis because you have made it specific. If you don't make it specific and you do your research with the first one, you are going to reach nowhere. People with journal thesis topic normally spend a lot of time, but they don't reach, they never come to any conclusion. It's important that whenever you are dealing with your thesis statement, hypothesis, you have to make it specific and keep looking at it. It's better that you must write main hypothesis on a piece of paper and just stick it to the monitor of yours, so that every time you see it, it just give you a thought and you revise what you are reading, what studies you are making will certainly help you in modifying this hypothesis. So be particular about hypothesis. After the hypothesis, in the introduction thesis, one last thing is also very important, and that is limitation. As I've been telling you time and again, that you have to be specific. Similarly, whenever you are going to make any sort of research, that research is going to have certain limits. You will have to limit your research to a certain city, to a certain region, or maybe you don't have access to computer or to internet or to certain books, or to you may not have some method of collecting data. So here you have to tell that how you are going to limit yourself in your study. Be very specific for your research. Don't make lofty claims. Just try to understand the seriousness of the task that you are going to undertake. So your first chapter of the thesis is introduction. It starts with the background of your main topic and gives relevant information about the main topic, and it gives the statement of the problem, and it also discusses background and need for the research. It also discusses rationale, the gaps of knowledge. It discusses the purpose of your research, very important things. It tells the scope, and it also has the main problem or the hypothesis that tells that why you have carried out this study and this topic, and it ends with limitation. So these are different stepping stones of this first chapter, and whenever you are going to write this first chapter, just try to fill in the gaps of these headings, and by you will start accumulating different sentences over these topics. After this, we come to the next topic, and the next topic is the literature review. Literature review basically is the very important part of your topic. It discusses all of the research that has been done on the subject. Since the purpose of this literature review is to concisely demonstrate your level of understanding of the research related to your project, so you have to discuss general as well as specific information related to your topic. You should not discuss all of the literature in depth. Rather, you should group your literature according to some general topics and only discuss specific studies if they are landmark. So in literature review, studies for your areas of research, you have to mention at least 6 to 10 of these studies. You begin with the main relevant information in this chapter, and you gradually take this review to the question, to the main hypothesis of your study. So in the end of your literature review, you try to prove that how your main hypothesis is related to this literature review. Normally there is a big question that how many of the studies or references we should include in this literature review. How many references? It is very important issue. Normally a baseline is 75 to 100 references, although in different topics this may decrease, the number may decrease or may increase, but normally suggested for a thesis. However, this number can decrease to a minimum, say to a 20, 30, 40 as per the instruction of your supervisor. Your supervisor may make some adjustment. Also the number of references to be included in this literature review depend on your supervisor or the requirement of the course. So a literature review should end with a discussion of how the literature relates to your study, what have others found regarding your research question. From their finding, coupled with your theory, develop a logical argument that leads to the statement of your hypothesis. This is your theoretical hypothesis expressed in terms of concept. Your hypothesis or hypotheses should be the conclusion of this research section. So this research section basically is composed of the references, mainly of the references, some references related to your study directly and some indirectly or in a journal way. And I have discussed the number of references that is normally included, 75 to 100 references, and you begin from the general and go to the specific, and the end of your literature review is very important. It should end with your hypothesis. Your hypothesis should be the end of the literature review. As reader, normally if you are asked to read any thesis, what parts of the thesis you would like to read are the background, the introduction and literature review, and then conclusion. Maybe as supervisor you will read the whole of the thesis, and but as general reader, people tend to look at this part of the thesis, this literature review, because it tells the reader that whether the topic of the thesis is worth discussing or not, and has the research gone on right angle or was it on the right track. Because if your research literature review section ends with your hypothesis, it means that you have tried to bring a coherence, a logic in your topic, and you have related it with the external information. So this is very important part. After this we come to the third part of the thesis, and this third part of the thesis is methodology. This section basically discusses the method that we are going to adopt in our research. It describes data collection procedure that will be used, whether the procedure will be experiments, we are going to make experiment and then we are going to prove. I mean, we have a hypothesis, and to prove that hypothesis we have to make experiment. Which of the method you are going to adopt also depends on your area of interest. Maybe in medicine the experiments may be made on animal, on people. In different field, experiment may be on different other things. So the procedure includes experiment, survey. Your different surveys are made to prove your hypothesis or to refute your hypothesis. So your method can be experiment, it can be survey, it can be questionnaire. This is a very common type of collecting data. This is very helpful but not very easy to make. Questionnaire for these purposes always takes time and is a painstaking job. So it can be questionnaire or it can be observation in any way. Participatory methods, case studies, they are also helpful method, or documentation collection or any other method. So any of these methods, these approaches can be your main procedure or your main method of collecting data. You can pick up any that suits your requirement, the requirement of your topic. We may discuss these methods in some detail because they will be certainly helpful if we have a better understanding of this, but when we have finished discussing the parts. The method must be reliable. It means that if they are repeated, they come up with the same result. So that's why they must be reliable. Anyone doing the same research somewhere should have the same answers. So the method, whatever you choose, should be reliable and internally and externally valid. Describe the sample employed and the variable used to test your hypothesis. One should give just enough information here so that you do not confuse the topic. When we say external validity, it means that results are generally the same to a wide range of situations. It is often necessary to present the evidence in this section that the study is actually achievable. Anybody doing this can have the same result. This section or a separate section should also describe the data analysis method to be used. Sometimes it is included. Describe the sample employed and the variable used to test your hypothesis. This can be very helpful for people who are going to research this topic on the same grounds. If you are using any statistical method, do explain it. How is it to be used? What is the relation of it with your study, and how are you going to operate it? All these things must be given. So this is the third part of your thesis, the methodology section. It tells the method, and these methods, as we explained, include survey, questionnaire, case studies, etc. All these approaches are very helpful, but you have to pick up the approach that suits best to your type of research. Then we come to the fourth part of this thesis, and that is data analysis or data collection or data interpretation. Normally, many of the novices and beginners collect data, but they do not know that how to analyze it. It's a very difficult job. There are different methods to analyze the data, and you must make yourself familiar with it. I told you that the best way to understand what is a thesis, a dissertation is, or even a synopsis, is to read synopsis of other people, just for a better understanding. So you will know that how each section is dealt with by the researcher. So you have to tell, will you use tables, spreadsheets or databases to aggregate and analyze the data? Will computer be used to store, manipulate or evaluate it? How will this to be done? Who will do it? How long will it make? Will it require special hardware, software, budget accounts or personnel such as technical assistant? What kind of analysis will be done? How will it be accomplished? How will findings be presented for interpretation? So this is what you are going to have in this data analysis section. You have to explain what you have, what findings you have made, and you have to very clearly explain that how are you going to deal with it. Any database you are going to use, any spreadsheet or any tables, whatever. Sometimes a certain statistical program is used. It must be explained so that the reader understands it very easily. So after that we come on to the next topic or next element of the structure of the thesis, and that is discussion. This chapter should begin with a concise restatement of your study's purpose along with any needed background information. You should restate each of your hypotheses. Now that you have presented the result in the previous section, discuss them in the section. So this is the section in which you try to make a full discussion about the hypothesis that you basically began with, and now you have a lot of information, and you explain that what specifically do the result mean and how can they be interpreted? Can they be interpreted in multiple ways? What do the findings tell you about your hypothesis? Do not make claim more for your results than the data really shows. Avoid any speculation. So this is what you are doing. You are going to be very serious in this state. You have to make a discussion, and as I told you that among different parts of the thesis, this one is a very important. Normally people open this part as well as the research review, literature review part, and they try to know that what has been proved in the thesis. So you have to make claims, but you have to make claims that your study proves. Don't make some claims which you cannot prove by the data you have given previously in previous sections. Conclusion is the most important part of the discussion or the last of the thesis. This should actually summarize your result and discussion, what you have been discussing previously. It should include a list of the most important findings of your study in a descending order of importance. You have to discuss that. You should also provide a statement about the possibility of future study, what needs to be done and what does this study contribute. So here you give the purpose of your study. Since this is too often the only part of the paper that some individual read, it is important to reiterate what you intended to discover and what in fact you found. So here the whole discussion comes to an end. Basically this part for which you carried out all that exercise, you list your findings. Even if you have some recommendation, just explain it. If you have some suggestions, do explain here. This is the part of the thesis that gives your final verdict to the about the topic to the reader. So you have to spend special time on writing this thesis. Obviously you will be giving time to the previous parts, particularly with respect to grammar, with respect to style of writing, with respect to spelling, etc., etc. But as this part is mostly read, you have to be careful in this part about all these things. After this part we come to the bibliography. These are the supplementary part. Bibliography part actually tells all the references that you have used throughout your work. It contains the name of the books, it contains the name of the authors, it contains the edition of the book, it contains the publisher of the book or the article. Have you taken it from any newspaper, any journal, or you have just downloaded it from the net? You have to write all these things in bibliography. Writing bibliography is not an easy task. Certain styles are used in writing this part. So we will be discussing later on that how this part is written, how you write the name of the writer when there is a book is written by one author, when it is written by two or more than two, and how do you add other information, the year of publication and the publisher, etc., etc. All these things are included in this part. And also remember that this is also one of those parts of your thesis that is checked by the supervisor. They want to see that how many writers you have read and how many references you have made in your thesis. Normally this part is also very helpful for people who are going to study on the same topic. They can know about people who worked on this topic. So be very careful when you are at this stage. We'll discuss how to write it. Then we have appendixes. Obviously any material that is too long and that was not included in the main text is given here, and after that we have tables and figures if we are using someone in our this section which has all the tables and figures related to it. So in this supplementary part, normally appendixes and table and figure and bibliography is included. So with this we come to the end of this discussion of the elementary parts of a thesis. You must have noticed this, that all these parts are very important, and how to write these parts need very concentrated effort of the writers, of the student who are going to write it, or the people who are going to make any research. Be very particular about different parts, how to write introduction, how to write literature review, how to write methodology, and the other section. And by now I'm sure that you must be familiar with what type of methods we use in this writing thesis, and how many references we make, and what are the important components of introduction, and similarly what we do in data analysis or interpretation, and what we discuss in discussion, and how do we make a conclusion of the thesis. All these things quite impressive, but there are certain few things which are very important to this main elements of the thesis, and they need discussion. So in the next lecture we'll be discussing certain other things, and we have to discuss one more important thing, though there are more than one, but one important thing, and that is the format, that how it is different from a letter, what format we use, how different citations are made, etc., etc. That we will be discussing in the next lecture. Until then, Khuda Hafiz.